All right. So the Dirty Dozen list that we went over,
Yes.
a couple names have popped up in the comments that I felt like we should just say.
Yep.
D'Artagnan Bagby.
Yep, I know him.
D'Artagnan Bagby. People are saying he's in there.
He definitely
in the top
needs
12.
to be in there.
Okay. And then Roy Harris.
Roy Harris definitely needs to be in there.
So those are two dudes that...
So if we were going to record this right now,
we are.
My edit.
We are recording.
Okay, if we are recording this right now, my edit is this. Is that like when I originally said it shouldn't be the Dirty Dozen, meaning 12. It ought to be the first 24. Because there's a bunch of people that should be in that who have equal claim to being in the 12. But when you add the numbers up, it's more than 12.
Yeah.
And just because the name sounds cool, the Dirty Dozen, is why people are trying to cram it into 12. But really, we should just say the group of guys who first got their black belts, the first generation of them, and not limit it to 12. Why isn't it 10? Yeah. Why isn't it 20? Like that number's arbitrary.
Totally. I did like a little short video that like lists all the guys.
Yep.
And there's 14 guys in there. I call it the Dirty Dozen, and there's 14 names.
Yeah.
But you know what? Yeah. I mean, okay, I'm a math person and I'm really into numbers. And so once you get to 24, then you're going to say, well, it should be the 36. And because this just goes on indefinitely. True. So really, if there was a way to organize the dates and just say these are the actual first people, because dates are dates. Even if the 13th guy got his belt the day after. But maybe if three people got their belt on the same day, they should all be number 5. That's really, okay, I'm a genius, math woman, figuring it out. CEO in the house.
It in.
Step, all you haters can just step, because I'm the CEO and I figured it out.
That is how you squeeze it in.
That's how you squeeze it in.
That's
if
how
they
you
got
fit
their
it.
belt the same day, they're all 5.
And there were 3 of us there.
5, 6, 7.
Yeah.
No. We'll call us 5. Yeah.
You guys are number 5.
Me,
or whatever
Rick,
number
and Dave
it is.
are number whatever, 5. Yeah.
What number
or 7.
was Chris? Or
on our list, Chris was 10, but it was 8, 9, and 10.
Okay, so they should all be number 8. They shouldn't be like, oh, well, you actually received the belt a minute before the other guy. No, that's stupid.
Yep.
Yeah.
They should all be number 8, and then that makes room for number, 13 and 14 on our list.
Yeah, because it kind of seems like 1 to like 20 or something. It's sort of like after that, you're just in there. You're training.
Yeah.
Or there should be like some years that people go like, if you got promoted from the years.
Or who was ever promoted before 1998 is in the OG club.
Yeah, you can make an, so maybe we need to make an OG club instead of a Dirty Dozen. We do an OG club, an old grappler club, and we go through and put everybody who got their belt in before, like up to the end of 97 or something.
Yep. And I definitely
OG club.
think there are guys, and I'm not going to start naming because I'll forget. There are at least 2 I know who should have been on that list, who should have gotten their black belt before me.
Coulda, shoulda, woulda.
But because of political reasons, they didn't.
Well, shit.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess.
Don't piss people off. Moral of the story is stop pissing people off.
I like the OG club. That makes sense.
Yeah, we can make the OG club happen.
Nice.
Call it Dirty Guys.
Dirty guys.
But what about the girls?
Dirty OGs. Yeah,
Dirty OGs.
Women can be in there too.
DOGs?
Women, little girls, I don't know, they probably shouldn't.
DOGs,
Women can.
the dogs.
Dogs.
All right.
The bizatches.
All right, open us up.
Let's get back in here. So we're back for another one with the CEO,
Yep.
the femme fatale,
They ain't going nowhere.
the jiu-jitsu, Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt, Melissa Haueter,
And my dog.
and the dog, Sadie.
We're a package deal.
Hi, Sadie.
I think
The dog goes where I go.
we're a package deal.
I know, but also the dog goes where I go. Like if I was in the house, the dog would be with me in the house.
Nice.
The
right?
dog is hooked on you.
The dog, that's my dog, even though it sits next to Chris.
We're with the OG, Chris Haueter.
Chris Haueter, original grappler.
Venerable.
Old
The
grappler.
venerable. We're with John behind the buttons.
The man who makes it happen.
The man who
Without
makes
John,
it happen.
we are nothing.
Beep, 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 beep. All right. Tobin, the producer, on the mic here.
Oh, you
Sadie, voicing up.
Oh, you
Marcus
shush.
is here.
Marcus is strolling in here
Shush.
right at the beginning of the pod.
Oh, you should.
Business Marcus is here.
Marcus with the support.
Marcus Biz is
our
in the house.
website guru and my right-hand man, my personal right-hand man.
Marcus Biz.
Marcus.
And today, we're going to talk about military martial arts. Okay? So, there's a bunch of different stuff to hit here. We're going to talk about some of the different martial arts that are practiced in different militaries around the world. We'll maybe kind of sort of think about how jiu-jitsu fits or doesn't fit into those. But first, we want to just shout out the Patreon supporters. The Patreon's been going.
Thank you guys. Supporters. You guys are the best. Thanks for helping us.
Yeah, it's amazing. The YouTube supers, the Patreon supporters, really appreciate it. And it's awesome that you're supporting the show, and it allows us to keep doing the show. If you guys want to join the Combat Base Club, which I suggest you do, we got a promo code.
It is podcast to join our Combat Base Club and have access to our video library, as well as our Zoom classes, merch discounts, and the podcast gives you the first month free with the Combat Base Club.
And then we got those new shirts.
Podcast 10 gives you 10% off of your purchase at combatbase.com.
Nice. And then last little bit before we really get into it is if you have questions for the podcast at combatbase.com. We also have the hotline, 949-791-7763. Hit the hotline. We encourage freedom of expression. So say whatever you want.
Say it.
All right. Let's get into this.
Okay.
Military martial arts. You have a military background of some sort, right?
Yes. All right. Before we say any of that, the true original thing, martial means military. Just like when martial law is declared, that means military law now supersedes civilian law, and everyone is under UCMJ in the States, which is like another legal system.
And that's what the National Guard is for?
National Guard is a state militia that can be federalized, which then it becomes a National Guard. But technically the National Guard, the commander-in-chief is a governor. But a National Guard's power can be seized by the president. So a lot of people...
But that's what a martial law would be.
Martial law is when the military law supersedes civilian law, where the military then instead of when you steal a candy bar, it's California Penal Code, blah, 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 it will be coded under the military code, under the 18 title things. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know exactly why, but one of the best speeches I ever heard in a boot camp was a Marine captain of the JAG, and he gave this great speech on how the pen truly is mightier than the sword. And another great speech, I wish I could find it and remember, but I'm really bad at verbatim remembering of things. But Churchill said something about the reason why the West rules the world is because we believe in the rule of law. And it's very important that a deal is a deal, that laws are enforced and performed, because otherwise it becomes chaos. So there's an element of the left that is anti-establishment and postmodern, which believes there's no objective truth, everything's subjective, la, la, la. And there's an element of the far right that is postmodern reactionary that tries to upend and change. And that's where I say I'm a true conservative, meaning that I believe in the rule of law. And I believe that the law should be changed through a legal process. And that process is what keeps civilization civil. Now, how does this relate to jiu-jitsu? So, we deal with the politics of this all the time. I'm pulling a Trump weave, right? I'm weaving it back. Yeah. Because we are in an organization of humans that create a structure. And structure, in essence, is what law is. We create certain rules. And each mat, just like each state or each county, has its own version of the rules. Like our rule here is you are always responsible for injuring another grappler, even if they're too dumb but to tap out. It's still your responsibility to not hurt their arm. Other schools, it's like if you don't tap fast enough, it's on you. And like that would be an example of something that could be argued all the way to the Jiu-Jitsu Supreme Court to rule on that, on who's at fault, right? Because in law, we're talking about liability. And then there's the civil law and criminal law, which are two parts. And I'm trying to parallel this to the jiu-jitsu structure and weave it back to martial arts, which technically means military arts. And I think really that is a term that's too broad and too ancient to apply to modern usage, which is why I prefer the combat sports.
But
or combat arts.
So because martial arts is military arts, and back in the day things were more like regional, is that how we have the evolution of so many different types of martial arts? Because there's all the different arts from different regions that are cultural, that are influenced by the culture.
I believe, and I could be wrong, I often am wrong, but I believe that people in the West, and by meaning the West, I mean Europeans and Americans, labeled the Asian combat styles as martial arts. Mm-hmm. I don't think that but maybe if you went to ancient Japan, where you are practicing a kendo, the art of the sword, but kenjutsu, these were truly military arts, right? Because there's that whole period where it was military rule, and the shoguns were, the martial artists were also military leadership. But I don't think that's ever necessarily been true in America.
But it's not just Asian though, because I know that they have martial arts specific to Iceland.
Each country has its own
kind of wrestling with its own rules
and Turkish
everything.
Wrestling. There's multiple versions of what I like to say is if you want to organize and sort it all out, you have the grappling styles. And you have the striking styles. You have the combat sports, and then the combat arts. So floaty, tai chi, kung fu is not a combat sport. It is a martial art based upon fighting, therefore a combat art. And if the art of wearing gloves and a mouthpiece and getting in the ring, boxing only, hands only, is a combat sport, but can you call it a martial art? And there was a period of time where people in the West did not consider boxing and wrestling to be martial arts, although they would say they're combat sports. That martial arts in people's minds in 1972, reading Black Belt magazine or the Tao Jeet Kune Do book, martial art definitely had a different connotation than the combat sports. And it was MMA that kind of brought it all together again.
Yeah. Wouldn't Jeet Kune Do have brought it together before MMA?
Jeet Kune Do is the original mixed martial arts. That's true. Yeah. But it wasn't a combat sport. It was mixed martial arts.
So they didn't box?
Not mixed martial sport.
Did Jeet Kune Do? They learned boxing. Yeah. So they really combined it.
Yeah.
They really combined all the martial arts,
You're right,
including boxing before MMA.
Which is why
started with Bruce Lee's stuff, right?
And he should get that credit
because trying to give him props.
Yeah.
Props Bruce Lee.
And he came from a culture which we all know still kind of exists, where if you go outside of your instructor lineage is taboo. So when he's training Wing Chun with Master Yip Man, he's not allowed to go cross-train in boxing or kickboxing or taekwondo or judo. And because he's over in America, freedom, America, he got to break that mold. And he's kind of at least the first recognized guy to say, no, I'm going to train for my individual expression, not to placate to the hierarchy.
So it seems like all the martial arts are rooted in combat, right? So it's like some people at some point in time had this idea that they need to get good at fighting in some kind of way. And they started to make a science out of the fighting and break down what's happening in whatever the type of fight that they're in, and develop it into what we call the martial art, whatever that specific martial art is for their fight that they're in. It kind of seems like. So it's kind of like a science leading to an art from the get-go, all these martial arts. And all those have kind of like gone into different paths and then come back together and weaved back and forth to where we're now at this place where there's like hundreds of martial arts, right?
Well, like, how would you guys say, what is the similarities and differences between approaching jiu-jitsu as a science or as an art?
I'd say the science would be more like the process of the jiu-jitsu, right? So that you're going in, you're thinking, oh, okay, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z today on the mat. I'm going to go and try it. Okay, that didn't work. Now I'm going to do X, Y, Z, and B tomorrow and see what that works. So it's sort of a science that
applying the scientific method to learning jiu-jitsu, just like we're going to apply it to learning chemistry.
It's like trial and error.
Trial and error.
And repeated experimentation with the same thing to see the results, analyze it, and then improve upon it.
Yes.
That's science.
That's
just saying. I have a little bit of science background.
Yeah. And then what would you guys say is the art part of it?
That's some more like, to me, like just let it go, let it flow, experimentation, not worrying about trying to track data. That actually works better for my learning process in a lot of ways now. I think in the beginning, it was much more scientific. And when I break it down for students, it's much more scientific about learning fundamentals. But once you get past that point and it's ingrained in your body, I feel like being more fluid and open is a better way for me to learn. I think for other brains, it's backwards. Yeah. Like possibly for you, you learn better by focusing on art than trying to break it down in a scientific method. However, as you've continued on, I see you getting more scientific approach than like when I met you 22 years ago.
Yeah, I think I think the science model can become rigid in terms of...
They need each other.
But they need each other.
Triangle. What else is there? Science, art,
environment, because that's going to
He made one already. He just can't remember what it is.
I can't remember what it is right now. It's driving me nuts.
But isn't the environment going to shape the art and the science, right? Because you're going to be crafting this martial art for a given environment.
Right.
And that's what we're going to get into when we talk about the ones that are used specifically for the different militaries.
Right. If we're trying to figure
spirituality, spiritual.
If we're trying to figure out which antibiotic works best against the bacteria, we have to identify the bacteria, see if there's similar bacteria that we're mistaking it for, like a subspecies, and we're doing tests and collecting the data and all that stuff. And the environment, that agar dish, is kind of like our mat. And we're experimenting with techniques of both attack and the defense. And I think the art part comes in where suddenly you find the nuance and the individual expression of it. And man, maybe I'm getting too into the weeds with that.
I don't know. I was thinking, like, to the third point, does it have something to do with like spirituality and Zen and like whatever? Because I mean, science, art, and...
What is my third one on that?
Oh, well, he can analyze it. We'll do another show about that.
Yes, because like lots of times when I think body, mind, and spirit, the body part I think of as flexibility, strength,
that would
cardio.
be like the science part, right?
And that, would be very much involved with these. But the mind and body together part is the science aspect. And when you get body and spirit,
That's
you're getting
the art
aspect of it, right?
But what is spirit and mind?
And spirit and mind blended
would be like I'm thinking, is it that Zen place where you just go to like complete absence of thought? We're not even trying to learn.
Zone.
We're in the zone. Maybe it could be the zone.
Science, art, and spirit.
Science, art, and spirit.
Spirit.
And then we get really artsy and spiritual. We have to bring it back and ground it to the mat.
Yeah.
And then the bottom line is, does this work against skilled resisting opponents?
Right.
Right.
So I think I guess the thing that I keep thinking about, one time you were talking about belt testing and you were saying how it's a show. Because I remember I was watching someone's belt test and I was so impressed by it. And then you were kind of telling me like, this is a show.
I don't think I've ever watched a belt test in my life.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't.
There's some cool ones
jiu-jitsu?
online. There's some badass ones
seen them a
online
couple
where these
times, yeah.
dudes just like
0 times.
tune up an uke, you know what I mean, and do
Yeah,
all kinds of crazy stuff. And I'm like, whoa, that's
And
awesome.
they test all their skills and all that stuff.
And I think when you were sort of explaining, like, well, this is a show for the audience, a show for the internet audience, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Because now, if you're like somebody who is thinking, I want to learn how to fight, and so you go join some place that's going to teach you how to fight, you got to understand that you're learning how to put on a show for that given environment, right? So like UFC maybe is not necessarily like people that are good in the UFC are not necessarily the best at fighting in a war, right? So it's like these different environments.
Yeah, wars are way
sort of
different.
decide.
Wars have weapons, and just because somebody fights in the UFC doesn't mean they know how to incorporate weapons, because like that's an area where I feel
a whole other thing. You see,
but it's still martial arts.
Yeah.
Weapons are martial arts as well.
Right. Yes. So that's why this topic, martial art, is so big and broad. Because it includes calling in our artillery rounds, sniping, close quarter, small arms combat, unit and teamwork combat, as well as can you throw a punch, throw a guy, and grapple. Right? It's this big, huge thing. And when people think martial arts, they're thinking about primarily combat sports and combat arts. They're not thinking the true meaning of military arts, which is a huge thing, which is technical part, strategical part, tactical part. And when you look at the way most militaries are structured, there's a tactical wing and a strategical wing. And there's sometimes the strategy that generals and admirals do seems absolutely stupid and absurd down at the technical level, where privates and corporals are trying to execute the orders. And it helps to understand strategy a little bit at least, but it's not your job to understand that part. So that's why it has a structure, so it doesn't become too many chiefs, not enough Indians, as they say, that old line. Is that racist now to say? I don't know. But so yeah, and because of the bureaucracy, because of that, it did take a long time for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and MMA to penetrate law enforcement and the U.S. military, even though a lot of people tried. And I'm not going to start naming names because I'll get in trouble, because I'll forget the guy that finally got the Marine Corps to adopt it, and the guy Larson who got the Army to. But
was that a name?
Yes.
Okay.
That's one name. But you see, now I don't name the Marine guy, and I'm in trouble, right? But there are definitely
He's
guys.
He's not listening. I think it's fine.
If you want to look it up, there are people that there was a period of time where I was invited because I was a new black belt, and Machados were there at the LAPD Academy to get us to show them what we think would be the best thing. They had guys from judo, but Gene LaBelle was there, like all these guys, really dumb, goofy Aikido stuff, because they were opening their mind to see what we could use to change our arrest control instructional procedure taught at the academy. Just like if you're in the Marine Corps or Army and you're in a combat arms MOS, military occupational specialty, you might benefit greatly from learning some MMA. And usually it's MMA. It's not just straight with jiu-jitsu. But then there's always been problems from very early on where all of a sudden you've got this competitive world with a bunch of 19-year-olds pit fighting and hurting each other's knees. And they have to be combat ready. And where you actually use a knee bar in battle? No, it's more important to practice small unit combat. So that martial art is a more effective martial art for the mission, the strategical and tactical operation. So, but then they've also found, especially in combat arms units, that by learning the art of jiu-jitsu, you're learning problem solving. You're learning a metaphor that you can overlay onto small unit team-on-team combat. Like holding a person rather than going for a sub. Control becomes more important. So when you're running 6 guys on clearing a room, it's all about controlling the environment, control the room. You don't want everybody spraying automatic rounds. You want people doing precise fire. You want a grenadier doing explosives, and that you can metaphorically overlay what we learn in the jiu-jitsu onto that, and vice versa.
And even technically, though, like to grapple with less risk, like it's more about you have to stay in control. You can't take big risks because your life is at stake.
Right.
So it's not this artsy way of practicing jiu-jitsu. It should be more about control and preservation. And I was just relating to that, because I think that a lot of times as a smaller person, I tend to tell other small people that you got to wrestle that way, because if you get in a bad spot, you die. It's like that. Yeah. It's not like, how do I get out of the 200-pound guy holding me down? It's like, no, you can't get put there. You don't get put there. You don't get stuck under a 200-pound guy. And
that, like, in the model where we think street, which is definitely what the military and law enforcement have to chiefly do, you don't want to get stuck under that 200-pound guy. But what you find out is the truth value of control, right? Because you want to control your opponent, control yourself, your own movements and all that. And then we contrast that with the art, where you get to experiment, where your objective isn't win, your objective is just flow, have fun, learn, and all that. That's the art part. And then the street part is more oriented in that way, like sport. Your objective is to win. But when you lose, it doesn't mean you die. When you think street, when you lose, it should mean somebody dies. Either you, your team member, the person you're trying to protect, whatever it is. But like as we've said, if you exist in that mind frame too much, you're not going to risk and grow and learn that you get from the art. And you don't get to test it like the sport can. Because if we can't test eye gouges, throwing in weapons in the middle of a grappling match, someone throws in a knife. Now, in the old Jeet Kune world, we would be all sparring and someone would click off the lights and you'd spar in the dark. Or you'd be sparring around, they'd throw in a stick or a knife just to spice it up. I'm like,
we should spice it up. Well, the other day we had a power outage.
That's right.
And everybody was rolling in the dark for a minute.
I just stopped. I was like, I'm not going to.
He's like, I'm going home. Bye.
Yeah.
That's funny.
The only one who kept going was Chime, I think.
Yeah.
Chime and Jasmine, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chime has inner Tibetan spiritual martial arts that is so perfected that it manifests through his body and his art.
Yeah,
right?
It really does.
So his family members don't have that like strong of bones and ligaments?
No.
Just him? From his Tibetan meditation?
It's partially genetic, but it's genetic that's been trained and honed into a certain style, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So when I first met Chime, this is a total tangent, but I was like, okay, this guy's eating something or there's something, you know? So
Vitamin T.
I asked him like, hey man, like, what's your diet? What's your workout? Like trying to figure it all out. And I'm like, oh, like you eat like a normal guy. You do work out, but it's like a little bit different, kind of normal-ish, you know?
Normal-ish.
And
He's
then
consistent.
To answer my question, he invited me to one of his like spiritual things.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh wow, this is it. The spiritual practice stuff is why
You never
he's the way
invited
that he
me
is.
to a spiritual thing.
He won't do it unless you like ask him. You have
Maybe I'll
he'll
ask
never
him.
like push that on you, but if you're interested, he'll tell you all about it. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, I think so like last night I was watching my son watch one of those ninja courses where they're running through all those obstacles. And there was a period of time where I was pretty fit. I could do 30 pull-ups, bunch of dips, run 2 miles in under 18. I mean, 3 in under 18, 2 in under 12. I was like a good obstacle course. When I was in the Marines, I got the company high score at one time. Like I was pretty ninja fit.
Mm-hmm.
But at that same time, that was pre the jiu-jitsu, an out of shape purple belt would have tuned me up, technically, right? Mm-hmm. So there's definitely a knowledge aspect, a technical knowledge component. There's a physical component and a mental component in these, right? And we want to ideally train them all and integrate. But sometimes we want to train them individually to explore what would happen if I only had my knowledge and I'm like weak and I have no body, or if I'm all fitness. And it's very common that the young purple belt discovers the fitness wing and gets really into getting in shape and getting fast and being explosive and doing 200 climbing arm bars. Go until your core is just blown out, because that obviously translates to a higher rate of winning. But then you could also say that part you can start sacrificing the art part.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm almost thinking too, he said the pen is mightier than the sword at the beginning.
Yes.
So maybe like there's an attorney's mindset that is
Attorneys
martial
love
art,
jiu-jitsu,
like
yes.
a martial arts
right.
practice that happens on paper.
And how do I get you to give me what I want instead of forcing it?
Yeah.
Trick you into sticking your arm out.
Yeah.
Or making it where it's going to be your arm or neck. It's going to be one or the other. And if I'm always trying on the neck, I can't get it, or the arm.
Yeah.
But if I'm allowing whichever one flows, it's like the common answer, what's your favorite sub? It's like whatever one presents itself.
Yeah.
Whatever one emerges. There's no favorite sub or throw or
I like arm bars.
thing, right? You're good at arm bars.
You are good at arm bars.
You are good at arm bars. But I used to have you do like climbing arm bars until you were exhausted, because then when it's in real world, it's easy.
I could see that archetype, like the business guy who has like an office that has like military stuff all over it and he's super into military history and tactics and stuff like that. That's definitely like an American archetype.
And clearly now, like because of some of the Instagram things I follow, there's veterans jiu-jitsu started by Joey Zentes, one of my black belts, Marine combat vet, which is an awesome thing. The task and purpose IG guys, I know those guys all train. All the special operations at least train a little bit in it. And you now in the combat arms, the Marine Corps and Army, have totally revised they're hand-to-hand combat models. And that's the shift that happened as a result of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu / Vale Tudo changing martial arts all over the world.
Yeah, I was going to ask, because we have a list here that I wanted to hit of some of the different military martial arts from around the world. But before I got into that, I was just wondering, like, how much are these guys practicing? Like, I'm wondering if someone out there, maybe we could get a military guy on here sometime that could tell us, like, if there is regular...
We can get Alan Shibaro here, we can get Joey Zente here, and we could even get the guys who are currently in charge of these things. Task and purpose guys, if ever you want to be on the podcast, reach out. But it generally tends to be more unit specific instead of Army or Marine Corps doctrine, but TRADOC wide. It's more individualized.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking, I see on social media people in their boots and everything wrestling each other.
Yes.
Have you seen that?
Yeah.
So I don't know how often they do that, but it appears to me that that's what they do.
Yes.
Yeah, and
they have smokers, which are where you put on boxing gloves and everyone gathers around, makes a pit. You have a smoker fights, and there's pugil sticks, which are the padded sticks that are like rifle butt, the bayonet, and you're fighting on a bridge and you're knocking. There's all kinds of that fun, cool shit that we've been practicing since World War I. To learn hand-to-hand combat skills. Like the hip throw is the first throw you learn in boot camp since maybe the Civil War. Who knows? Because the hip throw is kind of like the grandpa, grandma of all throws, right? Mm-hmm. That's the first one you got to learn. Even if, like I always say, I never use them, but I can bluff them really well.
And it's also useful if you have to carry your drunk uncle out of a building.
Yeah.
That's self-preservation and helping other people.
Very critical. Can I pick you up without blowing my back out and get you out of the burning building?
Yeah. I feel like a lot of the military and police guys that I know have an interest in like judo or jiu-jitsu that's like outside of their formal training for their occupation. And it just seems like it would make sense for these formal trainings for these occupations to have some of these arts in the mix. And when I went and did my research, it kind of like, I didn't spend a year researching this, but at a glance, it wasn't like super obvious. Like they weren't saying like, oh, the U.S. Army does Brazilian jiu-jitsu for 4 hours a day or whatever. Like there was nothing like that. Like all the military martial arts around the world were not specifically judo, were not specifically boxing.
Right.
They were their own martial art that they've come up with.
Because they are scientifically analyzing what elements of each of these arts can we utilize the best to accomplish our mission.
Yeah, so I think it's just a consideration, I think, for somebody interested in martial arts or learning to fight, to think about the environment that they want to do it in. And maybe a little bit of jiu-jitsu might help you, a little bit of something else might help you, a little bit of studying the tactics, Jeet Kune Do might help you.
As Melissa mentioned earlier, that is probably the roots of this whole thing, Jeet Kune Do.
Yeah, and it just makes me think, like, there's this really cool guy on Instagram that trains at Gracie University. I think his Instagram handle is like Sideshow. And he's sort of this colorful character, and he does these Instagram clips where he just like does like, oh, you're at the Dodger game and someone grabs you, this is what you do. And like kind of has his own little, taking the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu that he knows and like applying it to like these common scenarios, which almost like, I could see how that's almost like a funneling of its own martial art. You know what I mean? Like LA street martial arts.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
And I generally find, and this is where I might insult a lot of people out there, that a third of that is practical, 2/3 of it is
it's a show.
It's show.
His name is Sideshow.
The self-defense thing is the show part of it. And it's It's like I was hearing a podcast critique today, or I should say a YouTube channel critique of one of my favorite science educators, Professor Dave, if you want to look him up, who basically debunks pseudoscience, charlatans, because there's a ton of them out there, right? And of course, some people will go, oh, Professor Dave is a charlatan. I mean, because people, all that. But there's one of my other favorite science communicators who's kind of become anti-academia, which is fine. So there's kind of a beef. And what basically it is, like, I've had enough college chemistry to know that I don't know fucking chemistry, right? But when you have someone who doesn't know anything at all and you start talking about ionic bonds breaking down and how organic chemistry through the electromagnetic vibrations sinks, and that's how spirituality comes, and that's why prayer can change the structure of your, like you can scientific language things up to make it sound, even to a person who understands, if you use the right words, you can really hide your grift. And I think martial arts is full of people who have genuine skill, who can really turn it into a grift by showing you, I'll show you the move that always works, that I learned from the one guy who doesn't teach it to everybody, but he taught it to me, and I'll show it to you. And I used to have a joke I say all the time. If there were some magic move, I would have learned it by now. And I would have kept it for about 5 years, won a bunch of matches, got my ego all important, and then I'd have to feed my kids. I would have sold it. Mm-hmm. And then that person would have it. And within 10 years, everybody would have the magic move, and we'd have world peace. Because everybody would have the move that always works, right? But that's not how it works, right? And the self-defense grift is selling something that we all intrinsically and instinctively crave, which is the magic move.
Mm-hmm. So I was teaching a class the other day, and I was teaching something that used to always work for me. And I told them, I said, this move always worked for me until I hurt my hip. Now it doesn't work so good. It's a guard opening that I used to always use. Yep. Now, and that worked for you as well until it stopped working. But I was just thinking, like, sometimes there are things that always work if you become good at them.
Or your percentage is so high.
It's a high percentage.
It's virtually always.
But the person would have to practice and do the work and the trial and error to perfect the move.
Yes.
But I'm not necessarily trying to, like, convince them to give me money so that I can teach them secret jiu-jitsu. But I do think that there is some magic in jiu-jitsu and learning things.
There are hacks, little things that you can waste 10 years doing it slightly the wrong way.
Right.
And then be corrected, and from then on, it drastically improve your technique on whatever it is, right?
Yeah, and I just think there can be a lot of value in, like, looking at all that stuff too, right? So get people thinking about it and considering different situations and different moves and stuff. But
don't believe everything your teacher tells you.
Needs to be backed up by a physical practice where you're trying these things in real time-ish as much as you can.
Back in my blue belt period, when this wasn't a garage yet, I used to go in that garage so my neighbors wouldn't see, and I would shoot 3 arrows a day to a target back here, because I was, everyone read Zen and the Art of Archery, and I was into all these arts and the mental aspect and that concentration, and I wouldn't shoot more than 3. I would shoot only 3.
Why is it illegal to shoot arrows in your yard?
It's unsafe.
Okay.
Because if you shoot over, you can kill a person, right?
Oh.
Yeah. And I set right up over here. I mean, I wouldn't want my neighbors seeing me back here with a compound bow shooting arrows into the fence, right? Like, I shot it through the fence at times. Like, oh shit, that one went through the fence. Like, it was dumb young guys. Things, right?
Eating your cereal and the arrow goes ding, through the bowl and milk starts pouring out.
And I used to always say back when I was young, like, if I had an enemy who I want to kill, I'm going to either kill him with a bow, a sword, bare hands. So you practice a sword, practice your archery, and your jiu-jitsu, right? Like, that was my blue belt, naive, eager phase. But I would like commit to.
He's also like 25.
Yeah, and I would with 3 arrows every day, and that first one, think body. Second one, think mind. Next one, spirit, like almost just shooting as fast as it could go. Nice. Or the next one, I would think of some other triangular relationship and stuff. And
that's the one that goes over the fence.
That's the one. But yeah, it's kind of cool. And then, like, I don't know if it was Hunger Games or Walking the Dead, but something certainly brought archery. It totally, like, went mainstream. Now I drive past and they'll say archery things at the park and all that stuff. And like, oh, how cool. Archery's gotten like really.
Joe Rogan.
He likes archery?
He's super into archery.
Yeah, he likes archery.
Well, all right.
He blew it up. All right.
I wonder if he shoots arrows in his backyard.
Anything Joe Rogan touches is going to blow up. That's a lot of power.
Yes. I feel a need to just clarify that sideshow from Grace University. I think you're awesome. Keep doing it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sideshow.
All right. Let's hit this list.
All right.
We got a list.
Let's hit the list.
So the one that you hear about all the time is McMap.
McMap is Marine Corps one, and I can't remember the guy's name, and I feel like an asshole right
That's
now.
okay.
I should have researched before this show, too.
No, it's fine. I think just to mention it. So that's the Marine Corps martial arts
hand-to-hand combat
program.
Yeah.
So when you're in the Marines, apparently you learn this martial art.
Yep.
So
but you didn't used to when you were there?
You did, but it wasn't jiu-jitsu oriented at all. It was the hip throw. It was, strike, inner hip throw. It was like a trip we would do. Like, I can't remember all. And it's like in boot camp, you do maybe a total of 4 hours of hand-to-hand combat.
Wow.
And then you do a total of like 6 hours of
so little
rifle combat.
You learned to use a rifle for 6 hours in all of boot camp?
Butt stroke.
Combat. Okay, but you shoot it more than that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that's what it's primarily used as, is a tool to shoot.
Right.
But sometimes you got to fix bayonets and a butt stroke a guy, and horizontal butt stroke, vertical butt stroke, horizontal butt stroke, and you do these kind of like wakatas, right? And and then you get to go run through the bayonet assault course, and you run and stab dummies and butt stroke the next one and go over a hurdle and butt stroke that one's kind of fun, right? And then so McMap is totally modernized version of that. But still, I don't think Marines are going to spend that much time doing that, because they got to learn other things like how to maneuver a fire team, how to stop a sucking chest wound. There's other more appropriate skills than learning how to armbar a guy. And plus, when you're wearing web gear and a ruck, like, you don't throw a guard or lay on the canteen. It's a different thing. But anyways, yeah.
Canteen
McMap.
guard.
McMap is awesome. I don't know every part of it, but I've looked through the manual, and the Marines and prior Marines I know who are currently with jiu-jitsu black belts, they mostly approve of McMap.
Nice. There's also Army Combatives, which apparently is somewhat
pretty cool.
Different than McMap in some kind of way. I'm not sure how that would be different.
Chris was also in the Army.
I was in the Army Guard. But this was before any of this was instituted.
Right.
And it took, like all these things, it took one guy a lot of work and a lot of effort and a lot of rejection from the command, and then finally acceptance from the command, and then 9/11, because anytime a war happens, it drastically changes militaries. It modernizes them. So everything from the gear to the weapon to the round to the training all gets tailored to the war that we're currently in. There's a lot of things like the problem with the bureaucracy of the military is it's always fighting the last war instead of the next war.
Sure.
And it's a struggle to anticipate what is the next war, whereas the last wars we were in, the environment we were in, the style of combat, the enemy, and all that, like that's going to change if we're going up against China or like whatever it is, right? There are definitely smart brains out there trying to figure this all out and come up with all the different scenarios in which this is all good. And grunts learning the jiu-jitsu is a tiny little piece of that.
Yeah.
It's just a tiny little piece of
Sure. Okay, so in Thailand, they have a military martial art that their military learns called Ler Dit. And the Royal Thai
Who
Army...
you calling a dick?
He said dit.
Oh.
Ler Dit.
Dit.
Ler Dit. Ler Dit.
I love the Thais.
Ler Dit. So basically, this martial art apparently looks like Thai kickboxing
I'm sure
with
it
no
does.
rules that protect either person. So basically, no holds barred Thai kickboxing with weapons.
The Thais are tough.
Tough, right?
They're really tough. The Thai special operations guys are like tier 1 guys. And the Thai infantry and Marines are definitely...
And you don't want to go to Thai prison.
You don't want to go to Thai jail. Bangkok Hilton.
And then moving on,
Because they will pit fight you because it's a culture that loves the betting.
Yeah.
So you got all these guards and upper echelon that says, oh, let's put this guy against that guy, and then you win, you get good, then they want more money on you, and
jeez.
you got to spend your life as a gladiator.
Yikes.
Yeah, it's gnarly.
Yeah. I like Southern California. Stay here. Sambo. So apparently the Russian military, they train Sambo.
Yes. And they have...
Footlocks?
Footlocks, throws.
Knee
everything.
bars?
Yep.
Sambo's like, I mean, it's
Russians,
all the stuff.
I'm going to say...
It's all, yeah.
That's everything.
Eastern Europeans...
Whole deal.
Now, maybe this sounds like I'm coming at this from American ignorance. I don't know. But Eastern Europeans, Russians, are fucking tough.
You said that about Thais. Thais are just tough and...
Thais are tough. Russians are like
effing tough.
The guys who are fucking tough, who will go leg bar you in the snow when it's minus 20, go run barefoot and say, oh, this is fun.
And jump in those ice baths and swing their kids around like this. Have you seen that?
No.
Oh, yeah.
That's crazy.
Swing their kids around by an arm.
Yeah, and they throw them in the air and catch them. And I'm like...
In ice baths.
What's really interesting is I think it was Rocky 3 or 4.
The one with the Russian?
Yes.
I think it was 3. I don't know.
Which in reality, they like portrayed the Russian like as tough as he is, but have all this like high-tech training.
Yeah.
And Rocky's like low-tech in an alley and all that. When really it's the other way around. America had the high-tech shit.
Yeah.
Russians are out there in the snow chasing chickens and pounding things out. But anybody who's done Sambo knows that elements of it are as elegantly beautiful as the best judo you've ever seen or the jiu-jitsu. Like I remember being in Singapore.
I did Sambo once. Or maybe I didn't do that class because someone hurt my arm.
Yeah.
You were doing it though.
He was the lightweight Russian champion. Mm-hmm. And I can't even remember, but the way he would go into a drop soy was so beautiful. It was like not the Japanese way, not the Kozen way I learned.
It was the Sambo way.
It was this way where it's just like, and so effortless. I'm like, wow.
I almost like the uniform too. It's like a gi top with shorts and shoes.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like that's a good.
I think kind of
that's a good in betweener.
I don't wear shorts.
I feel like the no-gi and gi is like too far.
It's
I feel
like
like
a man
Sambo's
like
right in the
wearing
middle.
shorts.
gi top and wrestling shoes.
That makes sense.
I don't like shorts for wrestling.
No.
I don't know. I prefer pants.
I don't like skin on skin that much as I've aged.
Kinda gross.
It seems nasty.
A little too intimate.
Yeah, I've often said like
Skin.
I loved no-gi more than gi at a certain point.
Huh.
And then I think it was sometime in my 40s, maybe I was like instructing some group, or like I've been traveling around Europe teaching a bunch of things. Someone wanted no-gi, so I did no-gi, and I realized like my face is next to some stranger's hairy thigh, and we're sweating. Like I like
Put some pants on.
Yeah, I like at least like maybe the gi's nastier, maybe there's more bacteria, who knows? But the illusion of hygiene of the gi, some barrier layer between my skin and his, is something that I realized I like, and no-gi is nasty.
I don't think I've ever wrestled in shorts. Even if it's no-gi, I would always wear pants.
You wear spats.
Spats, yeah, like leggings.
All right.
Anyways, no shorts for me. No sambo.
The next voyage we go on is to the Philippines.
Ah, the Philippines.
And they have Kali.
Yes.
A.K.A. Arnis.
Arnis.
Or Eskrima.
Eskrima, yep.
Those all mean the same thing?
Basically.
Eskrima,
this
Kali?
is knife and stick fighting.
Knife
with
and
grappling.
stick.
With
There's
grappling
moves in there.
And apparently this is one of the most popular military practiced martial arts in the world.
And Chris did it, right?
I did Kali I was doing Kali in the advanced JKD Kali class when I found jiu-jitsu. I had arrived to the advanced JKD world and loved it. And
good with a stick.
I was good with a stick. Yeah, I could. Now, as a show art, as a film art, Kali is probably one of the best on film.
Huh.
It just looks really cool and dramatic. You know, the movements, and blasting. It's definitely more visually enticing on film than a jiu-jitsu guy doing this. Okay, okay, yeah, it's just, it's a cool stuff. And some of my peers went on to become very successful in that industry. One of them making the John Wick films. I used to train with him in Guru Dan's class. And a couple of them went off and formed their own company, but doing stunts, got through that world. There were some falling outs in there. And out of my Jeet Kune Do peers, and I'm not going to start naming them all because I'll forget one of them, but they were all very successful in their own right. I should have looked them up last night and write down. That way I could instantly name Burton Richardson, Eric Paulson, Chad Scorsese, Damon Caro, Justin Williams, all of these guys, and I'm missing some, became very successful JKD representatives.
In Hollywood.
There's an awesome guy out there named Jason Cruz that has a school called the Kali Method. He's in Montana now. He used to be in LA. He's in Montana now. And he has a cool coffee shop called Bushido Mountain Coffee in Montana where he has mats, I think, at the coffee shop.
Oh, that's cool.
And they do
He tagged
jiu-jitsu.
me on Insta.
Yeah, he's super
about
cool.
something.
He's a super cool guy.
Yeah, he's a cool dude.
He
I don't know him well. Maybe I know him better than I think because I'm so bad with
Maybe
names.
I'm best
he
friends with
recently
him.
got his
Might be.
black belt from Hickson Gracie, and he trained with Crone for a long time.
Yes.
Yeah, he's a cool guy. Kali guy.
Yes, he's a Kali guy.
Yeah.
Cauliflower.
Yes.
But Kali hurts my arthritis now. Oh, my
Sitting
ribs.
here hurts my arthritis, so.
So this is another a fun one that I found here. This is a British World War II military martial art that they did.
Catch wrestling?
Defendu.
Defendu. Defendu.
Defendu.
Apparently this is a World War II martial art that they did for the British military.
And the
That was
SAS
interesting.
probably worked out all the...
Yeah, so that's that. I just wanted to say Defendu.
The SAS is awesome. The
He just likes
SAS,
that word.
is kind of the granddad of all NATO country and Western countries special operations. But
it's also a Scandinavian airline, isn't it?
Oh,
So-
that's right.
SAS.
One of the
Remember
other-
when we went on SAS?
Yes.
One of the other items too is SAS has some sort of martial art that they're like super secretive about, that you're not allowed to like write about. If
That's
you practice
quite
it.
possibly true. I'm not going to say because I want to be super secret. But a couple of years ago, I went and taught SAS guys
Oh, wow.
and BS guys,
And it
in
was
England.
super secret.
And Royal Marines and Army paratroopers. And
Could
yeah.
it be that the Haueter Jiu-Jitsu that
It
gets
could
taught in
be
the garage is
very
super secret?
similar
Super
to
secret.
McMap. It could be very similar to Army combatives.
And if you join the Combat Base Club, you can get a little taste of it.
Yes.
Yeah, Chris has had the good
super
fortune
secret.
of teaching many
Yep.
different military groups.
Yep. 1992, I taught SEAL Team 6. Like, if I was smart, I would advertise it, but I just think that's fucking
Hey,
cheesy.
Chris has been into Baghdad to teach SEALs.
I did.
Is that where that picture? There's a picture of you in front
Army
of a Humvee with a
SF,
bunch of guys.
yeah. All the Special Operations Command. It wasn't JSOC guys, but a lot of the guys were in the JSOC before, but that wasn't a JSOC. Well, let's skip through it. We're not going to talk about it.
But he has done a lot of that kind of stuff.
I have had the great fortune to contribute back a little bit to American troops who definitely keep the world safe. So, and people sometimes, especially on the anti-war far left or the American isolationist far right, have no idea that if it weren't for our American prowess in the world, things would crumble. That vacuum would be filled with Russia and China or gangs or whatever it is. We keep the world safe for global trade. Rule of law. Yes, we fuck up sometimes. Yes, we do some bad shits sometimes. But we're American military, NATO is definitely commits war crimes at a very low rate compared to other countries. And if you just go look at what's happening in the world right now, you will see the war criminality of other military groups. But anyways,
Let's move on. Now we can move on. Now I feel complete.
Jukendo, Japanese military bayonet fighting.
Ooh.
So they have a specific martial art that they practice in the Japanese military to fight with bayonets.
Now, but so in World War II, American Marines and GIs who knew that they were going up against the Imperial Japanese Army, they like, you got to remember that this is before a TV. There were
My
movies.
grandpa was there, right?
and
My
films,
grandpa
yeah.
just turned 100,
Yes,
and he was there.
there was great
World War II. He was in it.
fear of these Japanese Imperial warriors. Like, these guys are samurais. They will sacrifice themselves. They will die before surrender, and all this stuff is true, right? And one of the rumors was a Japanese a katana can cut in half an M1 or a BAR, and the M1 is your grand rifle. It's a big 30-06, and it's a wooden steel, and like a lot of guys believed it. And the lightsaber is basically metaphorically based on that myth that you would cut in half steel, right? Of course, you realize that the katana couldn't chop in half an M1, but it's kind of interesting how that was a distinct fear from U.S. and Australian GIs against the Japanese army.
Yeah, thanks to Jukendo.
With Jukendo.
So then there's Krav Maga, which is the
Israeli
martial art, but
Yeah.
there's a hardcore version of Krav Maga that's
super
not
secret.
It's called KAPAP. Kapap.
Okay.
And apparently this is like Krav Maga that hasn't been
Watered down.
like marketed.
Dispersed as a...
It hasn't been like whatever you call it, businessized,
For
like
the
turned into a
masses.
business, right?
Now, a lot of people will say and I could see why they say it. I don't know if this is true or not, or partially true, or even partially not true. But Krav Maga is basically Jeet Kune Do of the 1970s repackaged and renamed with slight alterations for military purposes.
Yeah.
So in some ways, the Israelis, before Americans, Brits or Germans and French, took the Jeet Kune Do concept and created a military applicable system and style for the Israeli military. Hence there, and like it relates to the whole, the history of how Jews have been fucked with for hundreds of years, pogroms, World War II, but the Holocaust, the motto, never again, is that motto. And one could argue right now, and I'm not going to, but there's a perversion of that going on where maybe they've gone a little bit too excessive over in the Palestine. There's ample evidence to see that they're committing war crimes, but then someone will yell at me and say, never again, and look what people have done to Israel, and they want to kill every Jew on the planet. And there are those people out there. So it's an unresolvable problem between
we take no opinion.
two extremes that hate each other, forcing the moderate to have to choose a side. And I like to say, at least spiritually, I refuse to choose a side. But anyways.
Nice.
Killing is bad.
Killing is bad.
All right, moving on.
War is evil.
The military martial art
War is necessary. That's why we do martial arts.
Or maybe it's just part of life. I don't know that it's
Preparation?
necessary.
Okay. You're right. Not necessary.
the military martial art for China is Sanchu, which is like a Chinese MMA
He loves China.
style.
Just kidding.
Yeah. I don't think I will go back to China, although there is a really wealthy guy who really wants me to.
There's
come out
nice
there and
people
teach.
in China.
There's wonderful people.
Wonderful people in
But
China.
the Chinese, the government
is a little scary.
the
for Chris.
MSS scares the shit out of me.
And their martial arts.
Their martial arts, I'm not that scared of, but I'm scared to shit of the MSS.
And their jails.
Oof. Because just like how Russia began to take Western prisoners on propped up charges, I think that's going to start happening in China soon.
Okay. Well, let's get out of China then.
Let's get out
Forget
of China.
this.
Get out of
All right.
China.
But they do have
Before
a
they
great,
keep you there.
long, storied history of martial arts. From empty hand to open hand to grappling styles to weapon styles.
And Chris got to see the Great Wall of China.
I did. I've seen
How many
the Great
people can
Wall of
say
China.
that? Just
Saw it
a
in the
lot
picture.
of people, but not me.
So that's Sanchu. All right.
Sanchu, that's cool.
Moving on. Let's get back to America here. In the 90s, there was a martial art, a Navy SEAL martial art. I don't think they... Scars.
Scars, yep.
Special Combat Aggressive Reactionary
Yeah.
System.
And I did
You
go
do it in the
teach
pool?
guys who that did some scars. In the pool, yeah. Water's a whole other deal.
Water grappling's fun,
It is fun.
but dangerous.
But
Don't
dangerous.
drown.
And one of my favorite guys in the olden era was a college water polo player, and he showed me a lot about how to.
Oh, water polo's got
Water
its own
fight.
little fighting style for sure.
And there
Wesley played
definitely
water polo.
is a whole technical style to drowning someone in the water where you don't want to get drowned. But yes.
Nice. All right.
But it's hard to train it. But you can. You and I have trained it.
Yeah,
where-
many times. Anytime we would go in
Yep.
a pool, we used to wrestle in the pool.
Yep.
But we don't do that anymore because now we're old.
And if you pinch, it's a tap.
Yeah, pinching is tap so you don't kill each other.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's cool. It's fun.
All right.
Mostly fun.
Back across the Atlantic
Mm-hmm.
and over the hills, Russia again. Sistema.
Sistema.
Russian
Now,
military
I am
martial
going
art.
to say this at the risk of being attacked and called a total asshole.
Keegan likes system.
Sistema is pure bullshit.
Minami does Sistema.
Minami does.
At least the Sistema that I have seen on the internet and the Sistema that people have attempted to show me make Aikido look real.
The way I asked Manami about it, and he was not trying to tell me that it was like some badass way to be able to kick people's ass. He was describing it as a spiritual practice. So I don't know.
See, then here's that thing. So,
But you just said it was a war art for the Russians. But maybe if they get spiritual enough,
and they do Sambo and Sistema together.
Better.
Yep. So
they Sambo better with Sistema.
Like, let's say that you had a friend or a child, and in 1 year they are going to be thrown in a pit against an unknown opponent. And you have 1 year to get them ready for said a fight. The last thing I'm going to do is Sistema, the Tai Chi, or Aikido.
Scars. Probably just sign them up for scars.
Scars, during the 90s was fairly advanced. It was very similar to Krav Maga. But, like, again, jiu-jitsu changed the world. And MMA changed the world. So, yeah.
Nice. All right, last one on our list. We're going back across the Pacific. We're hitting South Korea. Tukgong Musol.
Very good pronunciation.
Apparently that's their military martial art. I did Kuksul Wan as a kid. That's kind of like the commercialized Jeet Kune Do version of Korean martial art. But this is what it is.
But Taekwondo, the game of tag with your feet, where you can kick to the head, the body, you can only punch to the body, not on the head. It has these rules, which is kind of a fun game. Now, a Taekwondo military purist will be mad at that and say that's bullshit. In the same way, original Gracie Jiu-Jitsu guy is mad at IBJJF. The sport ruined it, right? And so there are people that say the sport ruined Taekwondo, commercialized it, and that there's a real Taekwondo, a combat-oriented version of it. And if you look on the internet, you can see the more combat-oriented version, South Korean military and rocks doing battlefield Taekwondo.
Nice.
I mean, it is kind of cool.
You could kick high with your ruck on.
Yeah, I don't know if they do it with a ruck, but it's cool.
So that's it. That's our military martial arts list.
But we got to add one.
Yeah.
That's not in there.
Toss it in.
French savate.
Okay.
So that was, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong out there.
It's like kickboxing?
But its origins come from the
Jean-Claude Van Damme?
The Navy in France. And it was when they're over in Asia trading and stuff, they got exposed to Asian style arts, which is all this kicking and all this stuff. Then the French sailors would be back on the boat and they would practice it, adapting it to wearing those heavy leather-soled boots, and created an art where you kick with the point of the toe or the back of the heel. Wearing boots and a cane or a sword at the same time, because the French Navy guys and the pirates were the ones who realized very early on, when you have a sword or a knife, you don't want to just be all stuck on this. You also have a boot that can kick and cause as much or if not more the damage than the knife, and easier to hit with. And you can kick swords and knives out of people's hands and all these other things. And so one of my good friends, Daniel Doobie, who I knew from Reunion Island, which was the first international seminar in which I went and taught, like, I knew sport savate a bit. I'd been exposed. I sparred it. I got toe kicked right here and knocked me out with a body blow. Like, my hair was gone. I could not breathe. Just a gentle pop, because the French were about precision and accuracy.
Is that how you say those words?
That's how I say it.
Okay.
Nice. That's cool.
I have
horrible French.
I've never heard of that
French
before.
is so bad.
Yeah. So I'm coming from Muay Thai, where it's more of a, a blast, and I'm like, I can kick fast. I had a pro fight. I think I'm good. I sparred one of the lightweight French savate champions wearing his wrestling boots. They look kind of like, and yeah, he gave me the most precise toe kick right there. Just
precise, not precise.
Precision.
The most
Nice.
precise.
And okay, but the last thing I was going to say, so I'm over in Reunion Island, and I've been exposed to sport savate and all that. But Daniel introduced me to this old school French guy who said, I do the real savate. And he wears cowboy boot looking things like a French version of a cowboy boot. And holy fuck, that dude will fuck you up. And
French
he was
cowboys.
old with those little inside kicks and this whoop, bam, where that boot comes and drops on you.
That's awesome.
It's kind of a cool art. And it was an art that would use the rigging and gear of the boat to grab onto handholds as you go.
See,
it's a cool art.
John and I need to do savate for our pirate
Oh,
adventures
yeah.
that we go on with our children.
Boating.
And I'm sure there are other martial arts out there that we have missed, because every culture has a martial art.
Yeah, these were just the ones that I found online that kind of seemed like the predominant military ones out there. And one thing I wanted to bring up is that jiu-jitsu, boxing, Muay Thai, wrestling, karate, kickboxing, judo seem kind of like to me, it kind of looks like those are the foundational
Those are the fundamental combat sports. Combat sports.
And then these arts kind of grow out of those. Is that fair?
When COVID hit, right? And all of a sudden, no one is grappling anymore. I remember thinking, and we're all going down internet rabbit holes at that time. In the past, countries have lost martial arts because of plague or illness, because it suddenly becomes really unhealthy to practice with these arts. And I remember thinking during COVID, like, wow, if we didn't have the internet and the recording of all this, and COVID lasted 50 years like a plague, which wiped out half of Europe, you would also lose all this cultural stuff, martial arts, because you wouldn't have the contact anymore.
Yeah.
You would definitely lose the, as Hickson says, the invisible part, because what you see on the camera, you can't necessarily feel, right? It is one of those things that you got to feel it. And that's not just true of Hickson's jiu-jitsu, although it is. It's also true, like I remember helping to train Randy Couture. And I thought I'd done Greco until you clinch with a guy who does Greco. Dan Henderson and all those guys, like masters at that. And I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt, just like I knew Hoist, once they hit the ground with all these other guys that they had never experienced skilled jiu-jitsu, that when Vitor Belfort fought Randy, I knew once that clinch happened that he was going to suck the energy right out of him. Because the Brazilians at that time hadn't experienced high-level Greco. Now, had Holmes not died, they would have. And there's that Bob Anderson Holmes connection to the young Hickson, young Higgins jiu-jitsu that introduced them to the weight distribution mechanics of Greco. And when you apply those weight distribution things that you learn in the clinch on the ground, you get the pressure game evolving in through sport jiu-jitsu.
Nice. That's interesting.
I've said that a million times.
Yeah, I like thinking of it like that, like jiu-jitsu, boxing, Muay Thai, wrestling, karate, kickboxing, judo are the foundational or fundamental
combat
sports,
yes.
Right? Things that you can engage in to develop skills that maybe you could use in other martial arts. If you move on to something that needs a specific martial art, like we talked about earlier.
And in the early MMA days, it was kind of thought that you needed to be an expert in one of those, and then you could learn enough to fill in the holes of the other ones. And I think modern MMA now is an art in and of itself. That you can specifically train for MMA and never do judo, never do sport with jiu-jitsu, never do boxing, but just do what you necessarily need for the sport of MMA.
Yeah, it seems like people think of it like that these days.
Yeah.
Like I train MMA specifically, and there's MMA gyms that just do MMA specific training.
But like I've often hypothesized in my mind when I'm up at night and I can't sleep, which is almost every night, is for both of us, which is imagine if like you're 25 and some little magic spell or scientific thing or an alien comes down and says, I will freeze all your aging for 20 years. You're going to stay 25 for 20 years. Think about what you could get done in the 20 years in athletics.
Yeah.
Because we really are, from the moment we're born, there's an hourglass that gets turned and the time is dripping out. And there's a window in there where you are in your athletic prime. And I don't want to waste that doing Systema.
Yeah.
I want to spend that quality time doing those 5 combat sports, which are delivery methods for effective hand-to-hand combat. Now, as I age and all this, sure, I want to polish it up with some Tai Chi. I want to see how slow I can do my... Yeah, like...
You do Tai Chi?
My jiu-jitsu style is kind of Tai Chi now.
Okay.
Wouldn't you say? It's pretty slow.
Yeah, but it's not, doesn't have that flashy flair to the Tai Chi that you're talking about. It's very, like, you can only feel it.
You have to feel it.
Yeah. You don't see it, you feel it.
I don't think they.
I felt it last
I don't
night.
think they smash people in Tai Chi. Just saying.
I felt it last night for 3 rounds straight with no breaks of getting smashed.
Yeah. So
By the
smashing
OG.
and Tai Chi are kind of like not the same.
I was
Are they
like,
polar opposites.
Kind of. I mean, I don't really know Tai Chi, but I think
I
like
don't really
90-year-olds do it in the park.
I spent like 30 minutes
Yeah.
just getting crushed last night by
Did
this
it feel
guy.
like Tai Chi?
No.
Ooh, I feel like I just did some Tai Chi.
Maybe
Chris
it was Systema.
You systemaed me out last night? Is that what happened? Okay.
Poor Systema. It gets so much shit from everybody.
All right.
Just from you.
Well, that's a little hit. We did it. We kind of hit all these. We talked about martial arts a bunch. That was great.
We beat it to death.
Almost.
We did not practice any specific and go over either Army Combatives or McMap's program because we don't practice it.
Yeah, we need to get a guest that has
We need a guest.
that
Yep.
stuff to talk about it.
Good idea, Chris.
Jim, shout out.
I'm going to shout out today to Southern California Combat Club, to my friend Danielle Suarez. Daniel.
I love Danny.
Danny.
Hey, Danny!
Hey, Danny, baby!
Danny from Queens.
It's world-class mixed martial arts training. Okay, so he has a little profile on our website, combatbase.com, but he's training out of Orange County, and they do MMA training, jiu-jitsu classes, and Muay Thai instruction. They maintain the ideals of training techniques that are going to be effective tomorrow, just as they are today, utilizing a blend of styles to form the perfect combat athlete. Even the most untested beginners are welcome to come in and begin forming the foundation of a healthy athletic lifestyle and working on the basics of these many forms of combat. You can find his phone number on our website and hit him up to find out where he's teaching.
Oh, yeah.
He's a beast. He fought pro MMA and IFL. I was introduced to him in a seminar back when he was a blue belt in Queens, New York. Between me and Eric Paulson, we encouraged him to move out west, and he began to dive deeply into all the combat sports, the reality-based combat sports. When I met him, we were the same weight class, and somehow
he was very small.
Somehow he got big.
Danny Suarez?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
he was a little guy.
He
fought like 140 40.
He would cut
Something.
to like 148,
Yeah,
something
yeah.
like that.
He was a little guy.
Yeah, I don't know how he did that.
Morphological change.
And he is, he's
not steroids either. Like
he has very technical jiu-jitsu that's applicable for MMA.
Yeah, that guy's so cool.
One of the best.
So cool. All right, thanks for watching. 1, 2, 3. Pound, like, and subscribe.